should any given title exist in the rapidly growing market of video games? Since that question is commonplace in the seemingly infinite AAA marketplace, why not form our own informal retrospectives as well? So, sit back, relax, and, should Metro Exodus really exist? Metro Exodus is the third installment in the Metro series of video games based on the novels written by Dmitry Glukovsky. Set in a near-future post-apocalyptic Russia where you play as a big boy named Artyom living shielded away from the desolate and uninhabitable surface of Moscow and the less so irradiated tunnels of the Metro, where you find yourself living a daily life caught between four major factions at war. The Metro games have always boasted that you can either be the savior of humanity or a ruthless, cold-hearted killer, except only one of those choices are canon, and you could probably guess which is which.
How about we trade places?
Metro Exodus was a long time coming, being announced in 2017 and releasing 2 years later after a single delay, totaling 6 whole years since the last installment in the series, Metro Last Light. Now, contrary to popular opinion, I've actually had kind of a mixed pass with the Metro games. Metro 2033 and Last Light were made pretty long ago now, and it kinda shows. Personally, I found some faults with those games, especially with them being older, and playing through them in 2019 again really shed some light on those issues, but that's besides the point. Anyways, the developers of all the Metro titles, 4A Games, was formed by a chunk of the team behind Stalker: Shadow of Chernobyl. After that game was deemed not fun to play and got stuck further in development hell, a group of people disbanded and formed 4A Games to give themselves creative freedom to make the game they wanted to make, and that game was Metro 2033.
Some people call these demons, I call them bitches.
While Stalker was a large shooter RPG, the team at 4A decided to go near polar opposite, making an experience that seemed to really latch onto the cravings of that era. A tight, focused, linear story experience. Short, but packed to the brim with lore, characters, horror elements, an interesting story, and sure, why not? Competitive, twitchy, first-person shooting! Now, when I played it, I found that Metro 2033 had some really frustrating internal battles. It wanted to have deep and meaningful choices, but it really didn't, and based the ending choices off of things like listening to long conversations, playing a guitar, or waiting to knock out guards until they're done talking. The game also aimed for gameplay systems that made you feel like you're a survivor, but it really felt like that was just an idea instead of reality, and for me that notion crept into the sequel, Metro Last Light, too. While 2033 and Last Light had some aspects that definitely did immerse and make you feel it was almost a survival game, like pumping your flashlight, burning cobwebs, and lower resources and higher difficulties, the linear-ended exploration and combat situations really made me as a player feel like I wasn't in control of my own survival. Instead, what did was the luck of exploiting human or mutant AI during those tense combat scenarios. Not to say everything was bad, because it wasn't at all. 2033 and even Last Light were absolutely revolutionary for their time, offering a unique world with a somewhat sluggish illusion of choice-based gameplay, an immersive setting, interesting factions, emotional soundtrack, and unique enemies. But now the world's changed, man! Metro Exodus is leaving the Metro for good! Or maybe not? Okay, well, that's fine. The biggest differentiating factor that Metro Exodus has to offer is the addition of 3 distinct hub world environments to traverse and progress through within the roughly 14 or 15 hour campaign. That may not seem like much given the always expanding number of open world and games as service titles in 2019 alone, but for 4A Games, most people agree it's a pretty big step. For a game that arguably feels very close to the last title in the series, it's pretty interesting that they decided to reinvent the flow of gameplay by making the majority of it take place above ground as you travel from point A through Z in missions, side quests, or hunting and exploring, as opposed to the very linear metro tunnels of the previous games. The inclusion of copious amounts of NPCs to encounter while wandering from point to point, crafting and resource management systems that always keep you on the edge of your seat, greatly improved combat, realistic animal ecosystems, a day-night cycle, and a plethora of lore through audio logs, postcards, and notes makes post-apocalyptic Russia, believe it or not, an absolute treat to explore. Thankfully, it doesn't even end there. Metro Exodus feels fantastic to play. While movement can feel overly sluggish at times, it seems like it was a confident and conscious decision on 4A's part to make the game feel claustrophobic, even if at times the large scale of the environments can contradict that feeling and supply a frustrating moment here or there. Weapons feel fantastic to shoot, the axing of regenerating health makes crafting and resource management an essential, engaging part of the exploration. Enemies are unique and plentiful, and they're animated with almost an inordinate amount of detail, and the environments are just gorgeous. spacious and really fun to explore, even though the game is way bigger than the previous ones. But the big question I kept asking myself while exploring the ruins of the world that once was in Metro Exodus, crafting medkits, stripping weapons of attachments and materials, exploring every abandoned building, and yeah, even taking out a couple bandit camps along the way was, does this game actually still feel like Metro? While the core gameplay, lore, characters, and soundtrack are all part of the package, the biggest change is in the atmosphere. 4A's evolution of Metro into a mutated linear first-person shooter turned immersive sim hybrid does undoubtedly draw parallels to other experiences like Bethesda's Fallout games, or even a game like Far Cry 5, where you can encounter random events through a large area, have the ability to take out bandit camps, or just wander aimlessly whenever you want to basically wherever you want, with little to no restriction. Honestly, I found myself doing a double take every now and then, thinking I was playing Fallout 4 more than a couple times while wandering the wastelands Exodus has to offer. Quintessentially, it comes down to this. If you choose to explore, hunt mutants, or craft and upgrade your arsenal during your time with Metro Exodus, it's not always going to feel like Metro. Is that bad? That's completely subjective. Thankfully, I could say, for me, it's not bad at all. I feel like the expanding nature of the gameplay by adding brand new survival mechanics with crafting, upgrading, side missions, and player freedom finally brings Metro to what the previous games claimed to but fell short of being: an in-depth survival experience in a post-apocalyptic setting with player freedom in choice and execution. Sadly, though, I did experience a few bugs that hindered my experience to an extent, like enemies floating midair and being picked up by a demon and getting stuck in an infinite flying animation. Wait, hold on a second.
Move out as soon as you're ready.
The absolute worst oversight is actually part of all versions of the game and still hasn't been patched yet. Do you like story exposition? Do you enjoy atmospheric conversations about heavy subjects? Well, who cares? Artyom is wearing his tap dancing shoes and all he shimmies and shakes away from all dialogue. I honestly don't know how they released the game with this one bug still consistently in all parts of the game. When you're in dialogue, you walk slowly, and when they cap your walk speed, the footsteps are completely inconsistent and way too fast, which totally breaks the immersion from an otherwise fantastic soundscape. Ugh, 4A, please fix it. Well, besides the few subpar things I've encountered, the main positive takeaway is that 4A's spin on freedom of choice in gameplay and traversal doesn't feel sluggish or dated. It actually feels pretty much in place with what you come to expect with this genre in 2019, while actually having enough of the original Metro feel to offer a pretty unique and almost Lovecraftian spin on the influences that 4A games drew from.
But what good are these fantasies in a silent world? Silent, Artyom? Because it's dead.
The introduction to Metro Exodus feels way shorter than it actually is. I ended up playing through it twice after tweaking my PC to fix some instability problems I had on Windows 10 day one, and it felt like 10 minutes had passed, but the game only opens up after about 45 minutes of gameplay. I think that alone is a testament to what a fantastic job the writers have done with this game. Not once did I feel that Metro Exodus wasted my time. The expanded world could have easily merited a big hit to quest focus and story coherency, but instead it uses that to its advantage by actually having very few overall quests. That in turn actually allows 4A to fine-tune the variety of actions you end up partaking in during main missions or side quests, making the game feel less repetitive and more along the lines of a fresh, tailored linear experience, even despite the size of the world. While the big story moments are largely predictable and the game doesn't really blow your mind with crazy plot twists, the tailored story that the writers crafted for Metro Exodus feels like the strongest in the series by far. With large-scale events, engaging discoveries, a fantastic array of areas, and lovable characters, Metro Exodus captivated me from start to finish with its unique universe and lore, wrapping up most story arcs and supplying a surprising amount of character development without ever feeling forced. The story in Exodus is easily the most compelling reason to pick up the game, and it just never fails to keep your attention no matter your playstyle.
What do you know? Everything is perfect.
This is great!
Great job!
I downright love the crew aspect of Metro Exodus. The majority of the game is spent traversing interesting and atmospheric environments, traveling with a group of ragtag Spartans of the Order on a cool-looking pre-war train called the Aurora. At first, I was worried that the undertaking of a group of 9 or 10 characters would feel cluttered or have a lack of focus, especially since Metro has always had extremely tight focus with claustrophobic situations, and they could have really screwed it up, but I was extremely happy to be wrong. The just endless character development development and lore that they inflict on you during open gameplay dialogue makes all of the characters in the crew feel like real living characters that you actually know, care about, enjoy talking to, and even end up wanting to discover more of their past and personal idiosyncrasies after you finish the game. It's really engaging to get to know these guys, and I went out of the experience actually remembering each character, what their arcs were, and I was really itching to find out what happens to their characters in the future. And that's pretty hard to do, especially when they give you a lot of choice in gameplay to just go or do whatever you want. 4A Games made some absolutely incredible characters in Exodus with what seems like almost endless dialogue and depth. The game at its core may have hub-based gameplay, but it's still a linear experience at its core through story progression, but the actual script for the game has got to be nearly as thick as some open world games. The amount of dialogue at times is just extremely overwhelming, and it works greatly in the game's favor. Although it kind of seems like this game has a talk or die mentality, because dude, it's been like 40 minutes. Can I feel something?
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
Obviously, I've always loved BioShock for its immersive world with fantastic writing and audio logs, but I can confidently say, for me, this game smashed all 3 of those games in terms of how much universe-enhancing lore the player can experience through real non-player character exposition alone. And for it to be a single-player linear game at its core, it's just jaw-dropping and the absolute best part of Metro Exodus. The characters of Metro Exodus are the best standout aspect of the game by far, and the engrossing, flowing dialogue at times made my jaw hit the floor and just stay there for minutes on end as I spent time with the engaging and atmospheric dialogue between characters of the ragtag crew of the Aurora.
You know, one thing I like about the bad guys, there's always a lot of discussion before they get around to pulling the trigger.
In the previous Metro games, something that really bugged me, especially in 2033, was the game's morality system. I mean, on paper, it's really interesting for a linear story game to judge your every move and dynamically change the story based on how good or bad you decide to be, but honestly, Metro's implementation in the past has made pretty much no sense. The story outcomes were never based on who you killed or spared unless they surrendered to you during combat. Like I said earlier, instead it was just highly scripted and mostly based off of things like interacting with musical instruments or waiting for conversations to end before acting in combat. I could definitely see what they were going for with the morality system, but it didn't really work intuitively enough, and the rules never really ended up being understood by most players. In 2033, if you got a certain amount of screen flashes during gameplay, you unlocked the good ending, where at the last second, our team discovers the true good natures of the Dark Ones, and that discovery in turn allows the player to save them from being nuked. Now, you'd think the whole listening to conversations during sneaky sections for morality points thing would lead to the realization that the Dark Ones were good by immersively uncovering tidbits of information from other people about the Dark Ones. But honestly, the majority of the conversations you sit through in combat are just like,
"Wish I could quit smoking, man. It's hurting my health. Be right back. Gonna take a smoke break."
And then after that, the screen would blink and you've just been awarded a shiny new morality point. But honestly, I just kept asking myself while playing, how is this helping our team uncover the mystery of the Dark Ones? If you choose to pause combat and listen to enemy conversations to get a morality point, the game never actually supplies critical information to support Artyom's discovery that the Dark Ones were good. So why to play this guitar allow me to say the Dark Ones made absolute the most? I still love 2033 and Last Light, but thankfully, Metro Exodus improves upon the previous game's footprint in terms of player choice as well. Morality flashes are fewer and far between in this game, but way more realistic. It seems like listening to conversations doesn't really do anything for you anymore, and it just serves to supply more lore, which I like a lot better. Overall, I never found myself getting annoyed by not knowing if I was canonically being a good character or not. I didn't feel the need to reload to change decisions at any point, which is a big plus. 4A Games finally implemented their best player choice systems to date in Exodus, and you can tell because they're almost completely invisible during gameplay, which in turn greatly improves the fluidity of the player choice and makes the game feel competent and, most importantly, coherent. Not to say the entire experience was purely positive for me, because while the game did offer me the best experience I've had with a game in 2019 so far, the game, like any other, does have shortcomings.
You should man the turret. It'll be harder to see you that way. I hope you know how to operate a machine gun, kid.
An age-old problem with story games that aim to have player choice has always been forced story exposition. What I mean is, in many cases, a game at certain points chooses to have story events that pivot the progression and pacing of the game. And 9 out of 10 times, that kind of story exposition takes precedence over player choice and, in turn, changes the experience. If your character is aiming to be non-lethal and the game suddenly forces exposition that's counterintuitive towards the playthrough you were previously aiming for, that can totally hinder the immersion that's naturally implemented through player choice. Now, to be clear, all 3 Metro titles have never actually claimed to be immersive sims, rather linear games in which survival is the main focus. And in Metro's defense, it does make sense that survival being the main focus if you go from sneaking around and knocking out people who are not deserving of being killed to being shot at with a tank. Shooting at the guys 2 seconds away from turning you into human pulp is actually a no-brainer. In the previous games, being totally non-lethal in one section and then being forced in the next into an automatic fail if you don't slaughter the people chasing you did break my immersion as a player, despite the fact that it does actually make sense in terms of realism. Mainly because they did decide to implement player choice in the normal gameplay, even though that player choice was pretty admittedly two-dimensional, but that's beside the point. That kind of dissonance felt like a pretty big juxtaposition in the previous 2 games, and sadly, 4A Games does carry that kind of exposition into Metro Exodus. That's not totally surprising though, given the fact that the last 2 Metro games had parts where you're forced to be lethal because of story progression, which actually did feel a lot worse in those games, given the super tight linearity. It does feel better in Exodus, but it still isn't necessarily a positive aspect of the experience. And sadly, it feels like those moments still work against the core gameplay. Now, I'm not going to spoil what points those are, and it's mainly just one big story event near the middle of the game, but after hours of open hub world gameplay and full-on player choice, it felt pretty weird to have the dated feel of story juxtaposition over player choice in 2019, being forced to kill certain people without any choice at all. To be fair though, the forced story exposition that is in Exodus is crazy and awesome to experience though. The game is a wild ride, man. I just think there's still a bit of dissonance between story and gameplay when they force choice on you without your consent. Granted, Metro Exodus does at least have the most realistic implementation of story exposition, because even if they did let you choose lethal or non-lethal at that oblivious point in the game, I would have actually preferred to kill all of those people anyway if given the choice, because they at least did a good job making it feel justified to slaughter a bunch of people whether you chose to be lethal or non-lethal previously. But after hours of the game feeling like a partial immersive sim where player choice comes first, the main gripe I still have with the latest installment in the Metro series is that they still kind of flip that notion on its head and negate player choice for certain story moments, whether it feels justified or affects the morality system or not. So despite the issues that I had with story events versus player choice in Metro Exodus, it's undeniable that those instances were absolutely crazy pivotal moments and served to further the progression of the story in a positive and really unique way. Metro Exodus has fantastic writing. Despite its few shortcomings, I honestly hold it dear to my heart because somehow it's still the exact experience I wanted to expand the Metro universe into a different kind of transformative and impactful experience. In 2019, I've started to just become fed up with experiences that are a mile wide but an inch deep. So many developers just want to create open world grind fests, and in turn, that undertaking ends up in most cases being detrimental to their core experience in terms of uniqueness, player connection, and most importantly, soul. So while Metro Exodus tries to bite off more than it can chew in more aspects than I like, for the most part, it keeps itself coherent with the feel of the Metro experience, yet it expands itself enough to actually draw parallels with what most immersive sims do, offering a tightly wound experience, a fantastic world, unparalleled atmosphere, and a game world that may be only a few inches wide, but one that has layers and layers of depth that can just KO most open world games in terms of open exposition, story, atmosphere, and the personal connection it can make with players, offering near state-of-the-art immersion that just oozes love and care that you can just feel from corner to corner thanks to 4A Games. Metro Exodus should exist, and it does so proudly while waving a little Soviet Union flag from atop its Epic Games pedestal.